Hello everyone, good evening. Welcome to another session of AIQRATE webinar specials, the Expo series. Today's topic is Emergence of the Resilient Enterprise, the New Next. And joining us today is A.N. Rao, ex-Chief Learning Officer, Cognizant Technology Solutions. To moderate this session, we have Samir Dhanrajani, CEO and co-founder, AIQRATE Advisory and Consulting. During the session, I request you all to be on mute for uninterrupted listening experience. By the way, please use the chat window for sharing your thoughts with us and all participants. You may also use this chat window for sharing your questions to be taken up for Q&A. We are recording this webinar, and the recorded webinar will be available on our website, www.aiqrate.ai. I would now like to introduce today's guest. A.N. Rao is the founder of LearningSherpa.net, focusing on consulting in the EdTech space and in coaching. In his diverse and successful career spanning 35 years, A.N. was with Cognizant, HP, Wipro, TVS Electronics, and Microland, and worked in multiple domains, including automobiles, hardware manufacture, IT and IT services, and functions such as technology transfer, collaborator relationships, procurements, production planning and manufacturing automation, business planning, TQM, delivery excellence, ERP, IT infrastructure services, and contacts. The common thread across the diverse roles and industries, as per AN, was the focus on rapid scaling, industrialization, and transformation of functions or businesses, leveraging a consistent leadership toolkit muscle, which helped his smooth traverse from Industry 3.0 into deep Industry 4.0. His last formal role as the global head of learning at Cognizant Technologies helped him consolidate his conviction that the only sustainable answer to staying relevant are change agility, learning agility, and a sense of purpose. Ian has an MBA from IIM Kolkata and a BTech from NIT Warangal. Ian, pleasure to have you in our webinar specials today. Thanks for making time. I will now hand over the session to Samir. Samir, over to you.
Thanks, NK, and it's a great introduction, but having known Ian for quite some time, and I had some very close, intimate, and I would say one-on-one discussions with Ian, I can say one thing, being a Friday evening, and that too we have folks joining from all across the globe, there are two things which everyone should do. One, I think it's a Friday evening. One, just kind of keep your all instruments away, because what Ian will talk about is something I can say will be a kind of a thing which eventually is what we are talking about, a future forward scenario. So maybe next year at the same time, if you want to repeat, you will see many of these assumptions and punts, if I may call it, coming true and tenable. The second is, I think for the first time ever, we have taken this particular theme which doesn't exist. And this is purely a germination and curation of Ian, where when we talked about offline in terms of what should be the theme, it was more about we've seen an unprecedented time of disruption today. The classic business models aren't relevant anymore, and it won't be relevant in the future as well. But what is important today is that outside of strategy, outside of how we kind of manage corporation, seemingly there is a big disruption which is happening, how companies, enterprises, organizations will evolve in the time to come, because this particular pandemic has posed many questions, and the relevance aspect of staying put for the companies is the biggest quintessential, I would say, issue. With that, I would just have Ian talk about, in terms of setting up the context, what he means about resilient enterprise. Let's take it from there. Ian, over to you, please.
Thanks, Amir. Thanks, NK. Memory goes back to 1916, when I was in a lockdown for 3 quarters, silent, away from the world, and then I was born. I did not really realize that I was going to go through one more lockdown in my lifetime. And, so getting into it, and I'm actually really loving it in a strange way. I do hope all of you are doing great too, and creating some memorable times while lockdown. The story of humanity, okay, I'm not going to talk about technology for a few minutes, has been a fascinating one from the time we started our journey as Homo sapiens 200,000 years ago in the Rift Valley in the Eastern Africa. And it's been incredible. For some reason, we describe the early stages of our evolution in terms of people. We talk about Indus Valley civilization. We spoke about Aztecs, the Incas, and the Mayas, the Greek and the Romans. We spoke about the hunter-gatherers who built Stonehenge. For some reason, approximately about 500 years ago, we switched from describing our development from a people to the technology and the changes. We talk about Renaissance. We waited a couple of 100 years. Then we talk about Industrial Revolution. 1 from steam, 2 from electricity, 3 from computers and internet. And we talk about Industry 4.0, Industrial Revolution 4.0, arising out of a whole cornucopia of digital technologies. I think this habit is going to undergo a change now in terms of coming back to the human side of a description of what we're going through. Let me explain that. What we can very easily miss out during the last 500 years is what the S-curve is doing to us. You are familiar with the S-curves, right? A new technology is born. The first 10-15% early adopters, then the 30% take over, then the late folks come in and the laggards. So in the process, it goes through an S-curve. What happened in the first industrial revolution team came in was we had approximately 170 to 190 years for people to adopt. The S-curve was about 170 years long. And then when we went to Industrial Revolution 1 to 2, we had about 100 plus years going from steam to electricity. We had about 94 years in the next wave. And then between 3 and 4, we had only about 40 or 46 years. Do you see what's happening in the whole process? The humans who are inherently change resistant, nothing wrong with that, because that's how our innate wiring is. The security comes from a fight or flight or not changing anything when you're in a state of security. So in the Industrial Revolution's earlier phases, it gave us enough time, 2 or 3 generations, to absorb the change, assimilate, accept it, come on board. But from the time Industry 4.0 hit us, so in the second half of cloud and a whole slew of our technologies, IoT, AI, robotics, autonomous, what have you come in, something very interesting has happened. Gartner is today tracking 120 hype curves and 2,000 technologies. That's crazy. For the first 3 industrial revolutions, we talk about steam or electricity or internet and computers, 1 or 2. And each technology brings with it an S-curve and a demand on people to change. That's where the trouble starts. Anytime a new technology is coming in, the 3 different adoption curves we're talking about. First, the best and the brightest in the startups in the valley, Silicon Valley, they come up with a technology that's incredible, that's new, that's the world changing, that takes off exponentially. CEOs and leaders get excited about it because that gives a new business opportunity, a new tool to hit competition with. Then that adoption start. But the big part that's actually following them, the organizations, the people, the societies, and the communities are still going through the S-curves. And this time, they're going through some 40, 50, 60, 70 S-curves in a very compressed timeline. So we have a situation now where the technologies are ripe, opportunities are ripe, adoption still takes time. We still talk about when 20% of processes will get automated. We talk about when robotics will become a part of a household the way, for example, they're becoming in Japan. Time to sit back and take a look at what's happening out there. If you really see, all through these 200,000 years, humanity, as all of us, have displayed enormous resilience to change. For example, the most striking story, beautiful story is what started with dynasty in 14th century, the dark death plague that ravaged Italy, most of Europe for 3 years. Florence lost half of its population. What can be worse for humanity? But in 100 years, what started as a bad thing goes to one of the most beautiful things that happened to humanity, the Renaissance, and Michelangelo's, Leonardo da Vinci's. So it's crazy to think that one bad thing led to an enormously beautiful thing, but what happened in between was an enormous amount of time, the 150 years to custom. So we're saying, look, us who have such an enormous capability for resilience, agility, adoption, why are we coping with it today? It really comes to a massively different explanation of what whole resilience is in the onslaught of, let's say, 200 technologies that we have to absorb and implement into life and day one. A lot of efforts are going on in the industry, not in a concerted manner. I think everyone is trying to find an answer. This is like the light before the dawn. We'll actually talk about it when we go a little deeper, Samir. So on actually trying to visualize. So one very interesting that happened was someone came up with an explanation saying, hey, listen, I think the definition we are using for resilience is all messed up. Earlier we said resilience is the ability to bounce back and be better than before when hit in the face with an adversity or a tectonic technology shift. Not so anymore. And a beautiful explanation when I was going through that came was, they said, look, resilience in today is an ability to fail gracefully. On the face of it, that sounds very funny. You said, look, why are we, I know we do celebrate failure, why are we redefining resilience and failure? What they're saying is resilience in today's world and beyond is for the whole structure, organization not to collapse when part of the system fails. You actually create this ecosystem of a lot of spaces out there where you're trying a lot of things, which we will, any organizational digital transformation journey today is trialing anywhere between 6 or 7 to 20 to 30 technologies out there. So our resilience really is failed gracefully in parts so the whole organization doesn't collapse. So if that is becoming the defining element, defining the slingshot for a substantial growth of digital to its potential, then I think we do well to both understand what causalities are, what's happening, and what we ought to do, and also formally acknowledge that a whole new enterprise is taking shape on the foundation of this new foundation of resiliency. That's why I called it the emergence of the resilient enterprise. So, sorry, I think there's a whole bunch of things out there. We can actually talk about this, the whole night, Friday night, right?
Sure.
So how do you, let's just focus.
Context in is great. And I think that's where the rendition what you gave is very absorbing. And this is where we would like to peel off, take each shred and talk about that. And I want to talk about in this broad manner more about the strategic relevance and orientation what the organizations need to go through. Now, a few years back, 10 years back, an average age of a Fortune 500 company in the S&P 500 index used to be 25 to 30 years, a good time period. Now, in the less than 5 years, it's dropped to 12 years, which means an organization which is there in the S&P 500 index have just 12 years to stay relevant or kind of either elongate or kind of just phase out, which means the likes of the Teslas and the Amazons, or let's say the Facebook and the Googles which have sprung up, I'm sure they've done something which is not only unique, but it's quite tangible and quite impactful. If we look from a strategic aspect, Ian, and this is where we would start taking one layer by one layer and talk about when they are talking about 2025, 5 years from now, or let's say 5 years, 3 years from now, how does the planning of creating a kind of a, let's say, resilient organization, an organization which will be relevant from 3 years from now, shapes up? What classic models from management theories or kind of strategic kind of orientation goes out of the window, and what new things are coming? So it will be good if we talk about that, then we gradually take the talent piece, we talk about, let's say, the business operation side. So your views, please.
Awesome. So, Samir, I think there are at least 6 levers. So I'm going to park aside technology. I'm sure that would have been spoken about enough. I'm talking about business and market strategies. I'm also going to park aside some of the governmental intervention, government things. Okay.
Right.
I'll focus on 3 that are really the 3 legs of this resilience tripod. One is leadership. Second is the what we now call the organizational operating system, organization model, organization design. We set it up. And third, equally important, is the person, is the associate, the employee, the learner, the human being in the organization. These 3 are undergoing some crazy changes. That's what we'll talk about. On both the leadership and organization design, almost 80 to 90% of our design principles did not pretty much change from Industrial Revolution 1, the chain of command, the hierarchical structure, till Industry 4.0. In fact, about 90 to 95% of the corporations are still in the same hierarchical structure, what we laughingly call the church structure, right? Very, very hierarchical structures. That is being questioned. So let me start with the leadership. If you listen to somebody like Satya Nadella, if you listen to somebody like Jeff Bezos in terms of what the leadership tenets, they look very different. They're not talking about, are you operationally excellent? Are you talking about collaborative? Do you communicate well? They're saying, hey, listen, hang on. Park those. In the new world, we are looking at some very different leadership tenets. First and foremost, authenticity and purposefulness. They say purpose is what insulates the organizations against the changes, because if you really look at any of the large corporations, what they do now versus what they did 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or what they'll do from 2 years later is going to be very different, because the technology and the models offer their own newer opportunities. Take the case of Amazon itself. Started as a CDs and bookstores. Now, if you look at it, they have fly their own planes. They are the lowest cost sea shipment thing on a worldwide basis. They are working on spaceships to actually cut down the dollars per transporting a kilo up into low orbit space to among the lowest out there. So what's happening is the people, we don't even talk about millennials anymore. Most millennials are 40 and 40 plus. We talk about Gen X, Gen Z. This is the mainstream workforce. And if you also look at those who are going into elementary school today will be graduating by about 2030, and second half of 21st century is going to be, what are they looking for? They're looking for authenticity. They're saying, can I trust you? They say, look, are you as a leader sending out a credible, what they call the orchestra frequency? In a philharmonic orchestra, the lead actually sends a 440 hertz frequency. Everyone tunes their instrument to that. They're saying, what is the tuning frequency we are hearing from you? What is the purpose that you're creating for us as an organization? If we stay on as an example for a moment, he's saying, hey, look, I'm going to give my customers the most cost-effective, best experience anywhere on this planet for the time being. Okay, that constancy, that's number one. Second, these are times when things change. You constantly have to take, as a leader, decisions that are not always hard. So they used to talk about ability to take tough decisions, not so anymore. Now they're saying, are you tough enough to act and strong enough to listen? Do you have empathy and respect when you have to take tough decisions? And at the same time, they're saying to be a successful leader, if you're a surgeon, use a scalpel, not a blunt spoon. That's not going to cut. When you're authentic, when you're empathetic, when the transparency comes through, People do not question hard decisions. People do not question tough decisions. They question dishonest
So,
decisions.
if I chime in, Ian, there is also one facet of leadership talking about what you rightfully touched upon. If you look at the Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, some of their outright aspects of saying, look, we will do this. So Elon Musk wasn't happy with the California traffic. He said, I will lay down a new kind of a, let's say, mode of communication, boring company, Hyperloop. Now, that improbable scenario has become a rallying cry, and rallying cry for them results into business which are absolutely unforeseen in the categories where they belong today. So how does that particular thing happens when we talk about some of these things looks outlandish to us, but eventually they've proven us wrong multiple times. How do you see that particular thing also, Ian?
Interesting. I'll switch to the organization design side. That's where many of those are coming from. They're saying, hey, listen, these hierarchical organizations are passe. That's not going to work. Decision has to happen at a micro level. That's why you have a new organizational model like holacracy. Samir, I didn't realize 180 organizations around the world are actually trying the new networked organizational model, not a hierarchical model. There are some big names like Sanofi. There are some big names like Mercedes-Benz. They're working on that. They're saying, look, let's decentralize, give the ability to respond at the point of action and get that out of the way. I think the initial things are happening. Now they say, look, organizational operating system has to go from not 10.1 to 10.1.1. It has to go from 10 to 25. Done. They're coming back with three more things that really address what you're saying. First, they're saying boundaries are blurring. I can't anymore say where my next competition will come from. I can't anymore say who is going to take away my food. So the traditional definitions of industry verticals are going away. What is Amazon? Is it a manufacturer? Is it an automobile company? Is it an IT company? Is it a retail company? Is it a logistics company? They're saying, look, first, boundary blurring as a reality has to be accepted, because otherwise you won't know where the opportunity is coming from, where the threat is coming from. The second, they say, look, now that we have accepted new definition of resiliency, earlier we would actually build an enormous ability, BCP, DR, rapid response, agility, so we can respond to situations. They said that's not good enough. Now, resilience now is a new muscle, always on muscle that you need to cultivate. And this muscle can respond to predictable changes, unpredictable changes. Take, for example, the organization Google has created, Google X. It's crazy if you read about it. They don't talk about it, but private. They say the purpose of this is not to solve the problem. Traditionally, we always created entities to solve the problem. Here, we don't know what the problem is. For example, they said, look, the traffic congestion in California, while Elon Musk has gone with a boring company, he said, I'll create multiple layers of tunnels underneath going at 350 kilometers per hour. Google, like, these guys come back and say, why don't we build the living abodes on sea? There's a lot of space out there, a lot of proximity out there. So what they do is, the purpose of them is to really look at the absurd. I mean, what you just described, till that happens, the situation happens, we consider absurd. We said unrealistic. Why the hell are we even talking about it? Why are we talking about building a colony on Mars? They investigate into the absurd, and that is encouraged and permitted. They're actually creating solutions. They're actually visualizing situations. So the new companies, Amazon's, Elon Musk's thing, they're saying, look, let's visualize the art of the possibility and be able to handle them. So we look at it this way. With 2,000 technologies across 120 categories coming together, you're not sure which of them will actually coalesce together to create a new opportunity. So if we try to address them in the way we address steam or electricity or computers, it's not going to work out there. Or they look at organizations like Innocentive. They created an open innovation marketplace. It's fascinating from a traditional thing, right? There is a proprietary chips manufacturer. They said there's a lot of oil going out on these. How we shake them up, they sent it to Innocentive. They put it up on the innovation marketplace. A violinist came and said, at a certain frequency, oil droplets will jump off that. So now they're saying, we have to make investments in the absurdity, in the unknown of the future. So when the absurdity becomes reality, we are ready for it. That's what is really happening. Take Neuralink of Elon Musk. Are you saying that in 20 years from now, human beings will have a USB 7 slot fitted on the head so I can upload the thoughts and download the dreams? That's a possibility. That's a big change that's happening. The organizations who do not accept or start making those investments 2, 3, 4, 5 years will be compacts, tandems, codecs of the world.
So over there, that's a great point what you said, Ian. The question becomes, you've got a small window to prove yourself. Now, you gave a very good example about Google X, Neuralink and all. Now, these are moonshots. Now, afforded by the organizations which are behemoths, tons of money, tons of kind of investments going in. But if we talk about the context, an organization which is, let's say, into retail, into CPG, manufacturing, struggling segments, existing kind of a, let's say, legacy they have. What's your suggestion or what's your viewpoint about how they would go around pivoting themselves? Because I've often seen you giving example, large ship pivoting versus kind of a boat. There is a difference. So what's the thinking over there from your side?
Samir, that's a great question. I think that's really the reality. You don't expect anyone to be Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, right?
Correct.
In the organization operating system model, the whole thought of an open organization is emerging. Take for example, the $500 million acquisition Wipro made 5, 6, 7 years ago of Topcoder. Take an example of Innocentive I spoke about. Innocentive has 400,000 solvers. They don't call them innovators. They don't call them smart. They say we have 400,000 solvers. So what happens is, for me.
So say the organization, please, again, Ian.
Innocentive.
Innocentive. Okay.
Samir, I think you just register login. It's fascinating. Okay, you can become a solver. So
sure.
Innocentive has 400,000 solvers as a community. Or Freelancer has, I think, the last count maybe 35, 40 million bright folks out there. Freelancer could be maybe in the software development area, but you have these open organizations emerging, which give you a massive muscle. 400,000 brightest people on the planet is much more than what Amazon's company X can put it together. So what people are beginning to do is, like the potato chip example I'm talking about, they're actually tossing thoughts or tossing what they don't even know is an emergent thoughts, having conversation on this. These platforms are actually giving them the muscle that they cannot, they should not, may not be able to. I don't think they should, because in the model that's emerging, either Bezos and Musk are actually creating their own pool with the market capitalization, or you have such an outlets of the world who are actually attempting a second way. And the third way, which I think is going to be mainstream, is this open organization. So they're saying that by 2025, 55 to 60% of all the US workforce is going to be freelancers and gig. Globally, 87 million people have already left the traditional organization role. They have become freelancers. That's going to be the solution. In that, Samir, when you're in that mode, do you really care what domain you're in, what your next product is? On an open innovation platform, I can talk about psychology of a frog. There are 30 people who come back and give me an answer saying, how do you make your frog happy? Maybe I have a pet frog. Or you can say, how do you have a oxygenless walking on the Mars? There'll be 27 people out there. That's powerful, Samir. That's the exciting part of what's happening out there. Your resilience is not just a muscle that you build internally. It's a muscle that you're borrowing from an organization model that I evolved.
So if we talk about, and I'm switching gears now, coming to the talent, and this is where we would leverage your great experience. I know you advise a lot of edtech, kind of academic institutions, other kind of, let's say, platforms, education platforms, and also, being at the helm of affairs at Cognizant on a learning, training, academy side. We want to pick up some of your nuggets over there. One of this facet you touched upon is about 87 million professionals turning gig workers. That's a massive number we're talking about. Over there, specifically when we talk about in the current context, the whole aspect for most of the organizations or enterprises who are recruiting is let's hire specialists. They are the ones who will kind of do that work for us, be it on the AI side, blockchain side, cybersecurity, cloud. But today there is a gradual shift about being deep journalist, and I've heard about that word from you only, which means it's a great shift from saying, look, I don't know what organization pivots will happen. I need to have a talent which is fungible, which is absolutely kind of, let's say, ready to adapt. And for that, there has to be a mindset of being more of a journalist. Of course, with a very deep intent of proving and getting the value, done for the organization. What's the sense over there? If you're talking about a resilient organization, what kind of a talent will be required to fulfill a resilient organization?
Absolutely. Somewhere in the last few quarters of my former career, I used to be embarrassed about telling the customer that I have 35 years of experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they would almost say, hey, did you meet a T-Rex? Because that's how old 35 years is. Okay. 35 years is 140 quarters. So much happened in 140 quarters. So for the talent, there are 2 or 3 things that are happening. Lifelong employment in a track as a career is, I think, is a concept that's dying in its tracks. Anybody who doesn't switch to a different role every 3-4 years, a different organization, traditional HR guys will kill me for it, every 7 to 10 years is obsolete. Your inability to change the tracks, acquire an ability to learn, get into a new role, new organization, new role, new domain without hesitation, knowing, hey, look, I'm a learner. Give me 3 months, I'll be on to it. That's what organizations need. So the traditional T had a deep in one technology, range and horizontal is changing. The vertical in the T is becoming not just a lot of depth. We still need those depths, right? You need PhDs in material science, whatever the next material for the spaceship. We still need some of those. But a large number of the mainstream business leadership and managers, those what they need is a diversity of a vertical experience. Because you remember, what I do in my business today, I may be in a communication vertical, but my next revenue line may be coming from automobiles. Other one may be coming from retail. So I think what people are beginning to realize is that to avoid mediocrity and irrelevance, I have to commit to lifelong learning in a different domains, number one. Second is the onus of learning is gradually shifting from an organization to the individual. So somebody was actually speaking to LinkedIn at one point of time. He came and said, do you know that the $22 million have been spent by people from your organization learning from LinkedIn and not from you? So people are actually taking ownership, saying, hey, look, my role has to change. I have to acquire an ability to learn. What I learn is irrelevant. So long as I know how to learn quickly and unlearn my previous skill, I'm good. Throw me in a new pond, I'll swim. So that's the second change that's happening. Third, Samir, is this is crazy how fast this is happening. Soft skills definition is getting redefined. We still need some of those, and we still need collaboration, we still need teamwork, we still need listening. Now we're quickly adding a few more. We are saying, are you curious? There's a beautiful ad that went out. Elon Musk is setting up his second school. First one, Ad Astra, he set for his children, that's for all SpaceX. He's starting a new school called Astronova in LA. It's an online school. You know what the ad says? If you're educationally serious and creative and kind and age between 8 years and 14 years, please apply. That's a new world we are going into. They're saying, are you curious? Are you a learner? Are you empathetic? Are you honest? So, Samir, I think to cope with this resilient organization, the resilient associate an organization would need comes say, he's curious, he's learning, he's not afraid of jumping into new things. Because with the 200 technologies going around, how can you have so many, the technologies are 4 years old, how can I have a 10 years of experience? It's not possible. So you apply problem solving and creative thinking in the technology in a very, very different way than we did in Industrial Revolution 1, 2, and 3. That's a massive change, Samir.
So curious, problem solving, and being kind of, let's say, up on your toes is something what you're mentioning. But
Absolutely.
yeah, but also over there, Ian, and I'm stretching the conversation with talent because it's a very critical piece from a kind of a, let's say, aspect of resilient organization. How does this whole function of HR? And I'm straight away calling, I think the biggest change which needs to happen in an organization from here on has to be human resources. The word per se, first of all, has outlived the utility. Second, the whole way how the talent is acquired, managed, retained, and even kind of, let's say, assessed, it's not working anymore. What's your take? Because I know you worked in that direction multiple times with multiple analyst firms and all. What's your take on that? And we're talking about something which is few years from now, which also means the existential threat of HR, how they should mitigate that.
Samir, existence threat of HR is not future. Now I'm moving on to very thin ice, Samir. That's a good thing about virtual. You can't throw anything at me. Compliance, operations, and logistics are the traditional HR functions that would stay as a whatever HR 27.0 things out there, because you want to use the scale to make those things efficient. You want to use AML for CV screening. You want to run behavioral tests automated to come down from 1 million to 70. In the manner that we're describing, Samir, the leader and the manager, and I keep saying that all the time, they have to be the Cupid, the curator, the Sherpa, and the change agent. Okay, they have to
say that again, please. I think it's interesting. Say that again, please.
They have to be the Cupid, the curator, the Sherpa, and the change agent. Traditional HR minus the 3 or 4 things I talked about, if you pull that out, that's going to take the form of these roles that leaders and managers will have to play. So as a change agent, you have to drive a sense of urgency. You have to send the message that change is not our embarrassment about our past. Change is our excitement about future. Guys, embrace change. As a Cupid, you have to make them fall hopelessly in love with learning, hopelessly in love with curiosity and searching and questioning, hopelessly in love with change. It's not easy, Samir, but I think that's a future we're talking about. As a curator, you're curating for them opportunity, bring it their way. You're curating for them the challenges, bring it their way. You're curating for them enormous amount of mentoring and learning opportunity. And the Sherpa. Samir, that's why I call my entity the learning Sherpa, because without a Sherpa, not one person would be on the summit. And Sherpa doesn't take the credit. I keep saying that if I have to choose between being Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary, I'll be Tenzing Norgay, because I'll put 500 more people successfully on the summit and bring them back safely. So leader has to be the Sherpa that handholds and takes his team to success, which is why I'm saying he has to be that symphony orchestra frequency. He has to be the voice of authenticity. In times of crisis in a resilient organization, leaders don't go mute, they go loud. You don't turn off your transmitter. You're not in enemy territory where you're cutting off your signal. You're in difficult territory where your team is looking for your signals. So HR in the current form has, I think, lingered much longer than Dr. have been. Again, pardon me for strength of language, and most of it has become dysfunctional. There is still some basic domain, Samir, of a talent domain that has to be inculcated into building up a manager, building up a leader. Anyone who is not in fancy with managing a people and coaching them should become a museum curator. You don't deal with people. Become a gardener. You only deal with plants, right? So otherwise, you want to be in a people organization, you have to acquire those, which is the reason the shape of the leader is changing. So in fact, you build people, if those 4 elements come together, the question is, who are you building? Are you building a Sully-Sullivan who, in a blink, decided that for the first time in human history, he said the only safe way to land his A320 plane is to land it on Hudson River, when both the engines died due to bird strike, Sully Sullivan, I think in 2009, landed his plane on Hudson River without anybody dying. Compared to a traditional model, the Casabianca, we used to learn it as a children, at least when I was a child, the boy stood on the burning deck. The father, a commander of a ship, told his son, saying, son, stay here. I like to go look up things, and the ship catches fire. Son just stood there and burnt in the flame because my dad said, stay here. So we want Sully Sullivans who know how to use that instantaneous, spontaneous muzzle to respond to your situation and save 155 lives than the Casabianca who said, hey, look, I have not received my orders. What am I waiting for? And sinks with the ship. So HR operations will stay backup. Because operation shared service, HR has to move into mainstream business. That's the only way. Otherwise, you can't cope with an extra link in the system if you have to be resilient.
A great analogy and set of renditions you talked about, and I keep on saying it's epiphany for HR to realize in terms of what changes are really adapt and inherit what they do. Great.
Apologies to the HR folks. Hey,
Part entire aspect of resilient organization about. Sorry, Ian. Ian, are you audible?
No, I was just saying. Yeah, Samir, can you hear me?
Yes.
Go on.
Am I audible as well?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Element we haven't touched upon is this operational processes. The thing around how operational DNA of a resilient organization is created, is kind of managed, and then it's so fungible that any kind of gyrations in the business is taken care. What's your view on this, Ian?
Spot on. When you take the domain part of the people development, hand it off to the leaders and the managers, the logistic that remain in the back end is what lends itself to. That's why I called it a back end shared services. Your payroll, the loss of the lives are common for everyone. Your recruitment logistics are common for everyone. Your things like your retirement benefits, they're common for a given economy. So once you strip that part of the human part and hand it off to the leaders, what remains is completely fungible across any organization, big, small, tiny, minor, on Earth, on Mars. It's all that, which is what I think it should be. Make it efficient, and actually have these very talented people in the HR organization come into the mainstream. Remember, I was saying they should do something else every 4 years. They should come out and go into business. They'll do great because they'll probably bring the emotional element that the hard-nosed line manager will not bring in.
So what's a new sense in terms of operating model? In fact, and one of the thing over there, if we talk about Amazon model, which often is quoted, is that operational dexterity becomes a fundamental DNA. I mean, gone are the days, as you know, in automobile, when a new model or a new version was to be launched, the assembly line used to be a 5 years process. It's truncated, of course, to now 12 to 18 months. But Amazon shifts that entire process in 24 hours.
Switch on the back of Google Home.
Sorry. Yeah. So
yeah. So how do you see that fitting into a resilient enterprise model, please?
Okay. I call it the something old, something new, the blend. Last 30 minutes, I've actually been saying that we need to leave behind some bad habits we acquired from Industry 2.0, 3.0, but there are areas like manufacturing, for example. Manufacturing has mastered the art of efficiency, mastered the art of waste elimination, mastered the art of cycle time reduction, time to market so well. When the new age service industry like the IT services started, for some reason, instead of learning from what has been done out there, you look at a Toyota production system, you look at the Kanban system, you look at a Canon production system, you look at a Shiji Oshingo's principles of a single minute exchange, phenomenal. So if only we're able to get those operating efficiencies, cast it into, copy paste it into in the resilient organization. I said, look, there are some principles of a efficiency that form your own a very efficient operating backbone. Have it in the back end. You have to release the CPUs or the front end leaders, customer facing people to do larger things on there. So your operating rhythm, your operating efficiency, the back end comes from that. So you're actually releasing the folks facing the market, the customers, the products, and the innovation, which are lots more of their psychic RAM and the CPU to actually focus on other things. So Samir, actually good you spoke about it. I think there are some areas where you need to go borrow from industry 2.0 or 3.0 to help industry 4.0 run faster.
Great. One of the questions which has come in and part of your earlier narrative where you alluded that there are 120 hype cycles, 2000 technologies. So the question is more about how does it look like in terms of grappling with this hype cycles, exponential technologies, and for leaders to really evolve and really thrive, how they should bake in this whole technology or hype cycle or these shifts of businesses as part of taking those decisions.
Samir, the smart organizations, what I call a resilient 1.0, I said the light before the dark, those organizations are doing something very smart. Earlier, we used to slice up our revenue by market segments or geographies. Now they're saying, the 3 horizons model that's become quite popular, what they're saying is,
right,
our legacy revenue is not going to go away. I mean, today digital doesn't mean, we don't do application testing. We don't do mainframe support. That's not going to go away. Let's be realistic. They're saying there is a slice of the organization that works on my horizon 1, my legacy. There is a slice of the organization that works on, what is already figured out in, let's say, digital, rapid growth, IoT deployment across, let's say, retail, across transportation, whatever else. And there is a slice of the organization that's going to look at my hitherto non-existent, your horizon 3. They're saying, look, I don't need the same shades of resilience in all the 3. Okay, and also realize that you have an installed base of people who all may not have reached the same level of maturity. So leadership and succession planning is now focusing not on your tenure, not on the guy who delivered the most revenue growth and customer satisfaction is not necessarily my successor. The guy who's most likely to lead my horizon 3, build a resilient organization, and give my future revenues going to the leader. So succession planning has undergone an enormous change. See what happened in Microsoft. Satya Nadella was coming in. He's only the third the CEO in the company. Satya Nadella coming in was such a break in the leadership succession graph. Okay, see what happened at GE. What's happening at GE, or look at what's happening at organizations like Accenture and TCS. They perhaps are in a traditional succession model. Microsoft has gone on a very disruptive succession model, and you see the change, right? Microsoft went in 5 years from being the 14th most valuable company to the second most valuable company, lagging behind only Saudi Aramco. So they're actually slicing it. So when I say resilient organization, it's not in the short term, the whole thing is not going to be that. There is a slice of the organization, which is the tip of the spear, which will actually move into that. Progressively, your horizon 1 and horizon 2 will kind of fold into what is predominantly going to be your horizon 3 revenue, which is a digital, which is autonomous, or which is whatever is beyond digital and autonomous.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
So succession rules are changing. So, I mean, somebody said something, it actually struck me, I was very crazy. They said, change your leadership at your height of your success. I said, what the hell? If they've been so successful, they continue as the leaders. They said, no, in the new model, these are not the guys, they're great swimmers. Don't put them on your relay race, because future is going to be perhaps relay race, or maybe swimming in polar waters, or maybe, seal hunting. You don't know what it is. So they're saying succession models are changing. That's another important part.
That's so true, as you said, even for leaders to kind of really see when they're at the zenith of their careers and that whole pinnacle of success, why they don't kind of hang up their kind of, let's say, boots to have someone replace is always a question which, I mean, folks talk about then, because that whole aspect of coming down, and it's happened, as you also alluded, that this year many of those leaders did not envisage, I mean, will create a lot of, I would say, gap in their professional records by saying, look, 2020 was a drainer. No one will talk about COVID, but their leadership. Absolutely true what you say. One of the facets which this discussion, Ian, cannot be complete is, and something which I earn as part of my living, is AI. Decision making today is getting challenged by algorithms. I mean, if I'm looking at you, there is a computer vision kind of a, let's say, technique where I can actually be analyzed to really kind of deduce whether I'm looking at you with intent, with a kind of a purpose of getting self-absorbed, understanding, or it's just faking out. Or if I'm shopping, my transactions, everything is being watched, which means algorithms are eventually taking control of decision-making process of the humans. And you talked about this Neuralink, which is what I call the utopian situation of artificial intelligence reaching its pinnacle and its supremacy. How do you see this whole AI fitment in the wake of resilient organization, what we're talking about here?
Samir, I think AI and robotics and automation has been given more bad press than they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
See, by far the most credible research on that has been by what McKinsey did, in the next 10, 15, 20 years. They're saying for every 25 million jobs that are going away.
Sorry to chime in, but you said the right thing. I've often been into conversation where just to pull down because CXOs don't understand AI, they say, oh, there has to be laws and privacy regulations. I said, look at the being AI positive side, then something being a kind of a, let's say, drainer. Anyway, please go ahead.
So what's happening is the leaders, the non-resilient leaders, are not able to explain to the people that, look, buddy, we are doing software testing. A bot can do that. Instead, I'll teach you to write algorithms. I'll make you a AI applicability architect. I'll make you a cloud-ready designer. So in the process, I think that air needs to be cleared up, number one. Second is, I really liked Ms. Romney's, IBM ex-CEO, her definition of AI. She says augmented intelligence. That's what it is. So hopefully the singularity will not hit us anytime in future, Samir. I don't think it should. I don't think it would. My belief is. So in which case, it's actually making life so much simpler. Samir, I was actually reading watching a podcast of a guy who said, look, as an oncologist, I could at the most read 2,000 papers. He said, now I have the benefit of 7 million cancer research papers read. It comes up and say, hey, look, and with more accuracy than I can do. Microsoft established that other algorithmic recommendation is better than a human recommendation. But human judgment after that is better than algorithmic judgment. So what this guy oncologist said was, look, 7 million cancer research studies, cases cured, it actually comes up and say, hey, buddy, have you thought of this? I didn't even know that existed. At that stage, I was able to use my experience to say, hey, out of the 3 options, I'll take this. So we take learning. We used to throw 50 people in a classroom and try to expect them to learn the same way. No, not anymore. Batch size equal to 1. Your AI algorithm says, look, AI likes to read between 6 and 7 in the morning. Between 9 and 10 a.m., he watches YouTube videos between 3 and 4 videos. Before he goes to bed, he only listens. If it can do that, so the last mile, 0.5%, 1% is me. Is all about being human. AI allows him to be more human than ever before. So why am I complaining?
Oh, very true, very true. So one of the thing, Ian, and this is a very different thing we haven't talked about, part of the question I want to also blend with something I had in mind, which I want to ask is about this education. Since we are talking about everything in terms of a tectonic shift change, in everything having a very new reset look, what we call the new next, education seemingly still have those challenges of degrees, courses, electives, kind of a thing, get into those teaching hours, content, and somewhere that fascination of, at the end of the day, I need to get placed. Help us evolve with the new model of education, while we've talked about the resilient education, I would say enterprise, what's the new model of education, Ian, please? And I know you have dealt with this particular area for long, so happy to take nuggets for our audience.
Samir, I didn't know. Albert Einstein had a lot of stuff on learning. I was quite surprised, actually. I didn't know the guy spent on it. He said, look, it's impressive that despite our educational system, curiosity survived a little bit after 20 years of onslaught of individual by education. Beautifully said. So I think answer really lies in an extreme situation like Elon Musk's, Astronova, right? What they're saying is the purpose of learning is to be useful in a role. Take the industry I'm most familiar with, right? Why is it that when I train a surgeon, he can perform a surgery? When I train a pilot, he can fly a plane. When I train a chef, he cooks. When I train a techie, he asks for a learning curve. What the hell is happening here? So I think the learning models of the future will have three primary things. One is immersive experience with a hyper-personalization with recommending and ranking engines. My system knows what I'm good at. It might say, why the hell are you doing this? Why are you not doing this? Don't read a PDF. What you enjoy is videos, number one. Second, like I said, learning has to go into the hands of the learner. Okay, learners, most have been a pampered lot. They think that it's the manager's job to figure out what he has to learn. No, it's your career. Get out of the rut. They say, look, when you don't sign up for a lifelong learning, you've already registered yourself for lifelong mediocrity and developments. That's the second part. And the third is, Samir, there are a lot of things I don't like COVID for. I had to cancel 7 vacations this year. What I thought is, what we've been reluctant to make a change of for many years, right? Distant learning, self-paced learning, video learning. Universities and education institutions have been refusing to go that way. I think overnight, in a blink, we actually moved. So like in many of these things, right? Samir, the pendulum will swing to one extreme. I'm sure it will come back to where it should rightly be. So the right way, anytime, anywhere, always on, learning and learning in the flow of my work. I want to learn while I work. Samir, when I'm on average, I'm not going to watch a YouTube video to see what happens with avalanche, right? I should actually figure that out in the learning flow of climb, learning flow of work. So the hyper-personalization, batch size equal to 1, taking the learning to the learner in the manner he or she consumes. I mean, the whole story of you can take a horse to the water, you can't make it drink, has been written by a professional. Who the hell told you the horse is thirsty? Maybe he's hydrophobic. Maybe he wants a beer. Leave the horse alone, stop maligning it, make sure the horse gets what it wants when it wants. Make sure the learner gets what it wants when it wants. Most courses, they're anywhere between 30 to 70% dropout rates, not because the learner is terrible. That's because I think we are treating like a horse that doesn't want to drink. So I think massive changes, Samir. I'm really delighted with the change in the learning paradigms that are coming in because of COVID-19. And I guess there has to be some silver lining. I actually see a pretty solid gold lining, for this massive dirty cloud.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Ian, we would have loved to kind of continue. We've had time, but let me kind of take it in a way where you've taken us to a cliffhanger moment. The intrigue and aura which you built in terms of how the next generation of organization enterprise should be. The whole aspect about business strategy, talent, leadership, operating DNA, and also not to take out the whole aspect about the culture was so well punctuated by adages, idioms, and I call it your anecdotes, which are absolutely anecdotes, which I call it ANR, which is absolutely for you specific. But I'm sure the audience in the last 60 minutes took a lot of those nuggets, which not only are, I would say, just the phrases or just kind of the statements. These are backed up, I know, with that 3.5 decades of experience, what you have seen, internalized, and now you're demonstrating. Thank you so much for your presence. Lovely session. Really enjoyed it. In fact, I had so much to learn from this session. I'm sure our audience also loved it. Thank you so much for your time, Ian. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Samir, it's such a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.